Good evening, everyone. My name is Kat, and I'm the Youth Services Coordinator at Carbondale Branch Library. I am a non-binary gay person, and I'm so thrilled to be introducing this educational webinar. I would like to thank everyone for taking the time to join us tonight. It's going to be a wonderful opportunity to learn something new and hear from professionals and youth in our community. This webinar would not be possible without our sponsor, Aspinall. We would also like to thank Lilly Rivera from Gender Spectrum for speaking to our community today. I am a member of the partnership presenting this event. Our team includes Aspinall, the Pitkin County Library, the Basalt Regional Library, the Garfield County Library District, Aspen Family Connections, the Roaring Forks Schools Family Resource Center, and the Love Notes Project. This partnership is a testament to how much our community values our LGBTQIA+ youth. We know that by taking the time to educate ourselves tonight, we can all better support our youth going forward. Thank you again. Now, I have the honor of introducing our facilitator for this event, Stephen Moreno. Woo! Stephen grew up here in the Roaring Fork Valley, attending the Glenwood Springs Public Schools. He is the youth program coordinator at Stepping Stones, where he leads an LGBTQIA+ youth discussion group. He is also pursuing his master's degree in social work and works with the Carbondale GSA as an advisor. Stephen is a champion for LGBTQIA+ youth, and we are so happy to have him as our facilitator tonight. Thanks, Stephen, and I'll let you take it away.
Thank you, Kat, and thank you so much for that incredible introduction. Like she said, my name is Stephen Moreno, my pronouns are he, him, and I just want to welcome everyone to today's event. Before we start, I want you to let you know that you can listen to the presentation in Spanish if you would like to. If you look for the language option in the Zoom menu, find the globe icon, choose it, and select the Spanish option. Si prefieren escuchar la presentación en español, busque la opción de lenguaje en el menú.
If you prefer to listen to this presentation in Spanish, please click on the interpretation icon at the bottom of your screen and select Spanish.
For a while now, I think over 14 years. And that's why I am so incredibly honored and grateful to be a part of this groundbreaking event. Events like these are important to show our queer and LGBT+ loved ones that not only they matter, but we care. And we value them. I also want to say thank you so much for everyone who took time out of their night to be here tonight. Thank you so much for to be open-minded. Thank you for learning, and thank you for being curious. We're going to start our event tonight with a lovely presentation from Lilly Rivera from Gender Spectrum. Lilly will be a part of our Q&A tonight, which will include panelists from several areas of the Valley, including youth from the Valley. This Q&A will be flexible format. We want to be sure to leave time and answers to all the questions. So we might finish at 8 or earlier. Please be thinking about your questions during Lily's presentation, and we'll address your questions submitted in the Q&A after Lily's talk. And now I am thrilled to have the honor of introducing the great Lilly Rivera from Gender Spectrum. With over 2 incredible decades of experience in capacity building and leadership experience, she has developed diversity inclusion strategies, trainings for a variety of public institutions and corporations. She currently serves as a Senior Director of Family and Youth Programs at Gender Spectrum, bringing her experience to the LGBT youth and their family. Ms. Rivera has appeared and contributed her expertise on numerous media outlets, including Mike, AOL Bold, CNN Español, NBC Latino, and Time Magazine. Her published work can be found on the Huffington Post, The Advocate, and the Feminist Wire. We are so honored to have Lilly here with us today, speaking directly to the Valley. And without further ado, the incredible Lilly Rivera.
Thank you, Stephen. You are a sweet human and very kind. I'm thrilled to be here with you all this evening. Thank you for the invitation. And thank you for joining us tonight. So, like Stephen said, my name is Lilly Rivera. It's actually Lillian. I go by Lilly. My pronouns are she, ella. And I work at Gender Spectrum. And a little bit about Gender Spectrum. Our mission is to create gender sensitive and inclusive environments for all children and teens. And we provide services. We're a national organization and we provide services. We do groups for parents and other family members. We do groups for preteens and teens. And we do education forums where folks can come and learn basics about gender and sometimes even a little more than just the basics. And we have a very robust professional development department that provides capacity building for schools and school districts to understand what are the needs, gender needs of all young people, and how do we create those systems to be able to support the young people to thrive, right? To thrive in our schools. And that's what Gender Spectrum does. And we're really excited to be here with all of you. And what I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to provide a presentation. It's going to be about 25 minutes long. And we will have questions afterwards because we're going to have an opportunity to have more conversation. Right. So I would, we'll start up the slideshow now. Excellent. And we'll go to the next slide. There you go. The second slide. There you go. So these are my community invitations, and I put these out to invite the community to show up in this space in a particular way, right? I'd like folks to approach this conversation with an open heart and an open mind. This is not always an easy conversation for folks to have, right? In our society, we don't often have very in-depth conversations about sexual orientation and gender identity. I understand that, and it's important that we figure out how we're going to have these conversations in ways that we can do that and honor our community members. So some of the reasons that we want to do this is we want to make sure that everyone understands that all of these issues impact all of our lives, right? And we want to do those conversations, like I said, with an open heart and an open mind. We ask that when you are talking about, I ask that when we are talking about our experiences, we do that from an I statement in order to center our own experiences and avoid erasing other people's experiences. If you're someone who shares a lot, I would love to ask you to move up in your listening. And if you're someone who listens more, I invite you to move up in your sharing. Ask all questions. It's important that questions are asked because this session is for learning, right? We are developing this space so folks feel comfortable to have those questions answered. And we're going to have someone sharing those questions to us, right? So that's why we have Stephen, the moderator, and he will be filtering those through. If you'd like your question to be anonymous, please include that when you submit your question. We'd be more than happy to submit an anonymous question. So these are my invitations. I hope that folks can approach this conversation understanding that when we talk about these issues, we're not challenging anyone's belief system, right? What we're doing is we're leveraging our belief systems for mutual respect, right? And for community building, to be able to create the community that serves all of us, and folks can grow in that community in health and well-being. So these are my invitations to you. I hope we can move into the space with this grounding us, right? Now, next slide, please. Now, what are we going to learn? So we're going to talk a little bit about the constructs of sexual orientation and gender identity. And the reason I say a little bit is because these are huge constructs and people have written dissertations on this. So we're only going to be scratching the surface, and I encourage people to go out and get more information beyond this conversation. We're going to talk a little bit about how we create fluency around vocabulary, right? The LGBT community is very particular in terms of how we identify ourselves. So we're going to have some conversation about that. And what do adults need to be an ally to LGBTQ young people? Hopefully you will leave with specific strategies that support you in becoming an ally for folks. So I will ask at this time that we go to our next slide. Okay, now, since this is a big group, we can't really have the conversation, right? But I would love for folks to think about, take a second and think about, what is your name and your pronouns? What is your name and your pronouns? Now, how often you will see some of us have on our Zoom identifier at the bottom after our name, we have our pronouns, right? Mine are she, ella. Ella is in Spanish because that is the other language that I communicate in the world with. Next slide, please. So pronouns, why do we ask that, right? In thinking about, I would love folks to think about, what was that like for you to think about your pronouns? Now, we're not asking you to share, right? Because we're not in a forum that we're able to do that. But what would that be like if you were to share your pronouns, right? And some of us may have, right? And why would this be important to do it for a colleague or for, and I say colleague first, because I think adults have to practice before we ask young people to do this, right? And if we're thinking about the school setting, we would want teachers to do this first, right? Because we're not going to ask them to jump into using a tool that they're not familiar with and not comfortable with, right? So what was it like for you to think about your pronouns? Have you ever thought about your pronouns, right? And what would it mean to someone who is trans or non-binary for us to say, hi, my name's Lily, my pronouns are she, ella. And this is part of my introduction as I move in the world in every environment. What am I communicating to folks in the world, right? I'm communicating, one, that I respect, that my assumptions of who they may be or who they want to be seen as in the world may be wrong. Right? First and foremost, I may be wrong, and I respect you enough to say, would you share this with me so I can respectfully acknowledge you? Now, may it be uncomfortable? It may be uncomfortable in the beginning. It will be uncomfortable in the beginning, right? We move in the world in ways where we function on our assumptions, right? So, because we're trying to survive. We're animals, right? We're figuring out our world, and we're traveling in our world, trying to understand how we move in this world. So when I come up to the counter, someone may say, hello, miss, may I help you? That might not be an appropriate greeting for me, right? But if someone were to say, hello, may I help you? I'm including everybody, right? And that person is including me regardless of my pronouns. So I offer this because young people often understand these concepts very quickly. Young people are often asking each other what their pronouns are. And it's important for adults, parents who care about their children, and people who are impacting their lives, right? People within the school system. How do we introduce this in a way that recognizes, respects, and opens up the door for possibility for young people? Okay, next slide, please. And I'm sure folks are having questions. When you have questions, we're going to get them, jot them down, put them in the question and answer function at the bottom of your Zoom, and we're going to get to all of them. Okay, so let's talk about sexual orientation. What is sexual orientation? And if I ask you my pronouns, am I asking you what your sexual orientation is? No, I am not. I am asking you, who are you attracted to, or who have you historically been attracted to, or who do you think you possibly may be attracted to? Right? Sexual orientation is a term that we use to define our attraction for other people. I've listed a lot of those. I apologize for the loud noises outside my window. I am in Los Angeles. And I listed some of those, right? So some of the ones that we're more familiar with are lesbian, gay, bisexual, right? Now, something that we may not be familiar with is androsexual. So someone who is attracted to folks on the masculine spectrum or male identified folks, right? Regardless of their sex assigned at birth or their gender, right? Gynosexual is someone who's attracted to someone who is female presenting, right? Is on the feminine spectrum. Heterosexual, most of us know that, right? So the ones I listed first are defined by gender, not our gender, right? But we're attracted to people around their gender, right? Pansexual or omnisexual are people who are not defining their attraction by other people's genders, right? So gender is not something that they factor into, right? I like handsome men, or I like whatever that is. These folks are attracted to other humans for lots and lots of reasons, right? So someone who's demisexual, demi-romantic are attracted to people based on romance. So if the romance is not there, they're probably not going to be attracted to people, right? And it's not necessarily contingent on gender. People who are asexual or aromantic are not attracted to people. So an asexual person is not attracted to other people sexually, but they may be attracted to other people romantically. An aromantic person is not attracted to people romantically, but they may be attracted to people sexually, right? Someone who's gray sexual has limited attraction to other people. And allosexual would be a great number of people, right? It's people who experience a sexual attraction. So from those other categories, we can put in lots of folks into allosexual, right? And then I've listed polyamory, monogamy at the bottom. Those are not necessarily attractions, right? Those are ways that people have relationships. Now, folks could have relationships with one other person. Folks could have relationships with various other people, right? So it's important that we know that polyamory is not necessarily a sexual orientation, but a way of having relationships. So these, I don't even have all of the terms listed right now, right? And it's important that we understand the key to these things and terms is that it means something to an individual. It means something to an individual. I say this twice because if I am a person who was assigned female at birth. I identify as a woman. And I also date or have relationships with women, right? Some people may identify me as a lesbian. So for whatever reason, I may not identify with that term, but I identify as gay. Very valid, right? So it's important that we understand that when we are prescribing an identity to someone, then that becomes a label, right? When someone shares their identity with us, that is a real identity. Important nuance. So you may know someone who identifies as demisexual. What does that mean to that person? If a young person says, I'm a demi boy, what does that mean to me? What does that mean to that particular person, right? I may have a definition, a book definition. It may not be how that person understands it. So I'm giving you a surface definition. The truth is with the individual. Next slide, please. Okay, so gender identity and sex assigned at birth. Sex assigned at birth is when a baby is born, the physician says it is fill in the blank, right? That's the first thing that the parents will hear, that they have a girl or a boy. Now, the nuance here is that 1 in 2,000 births do not fall into the female or male category. We have babies that are intersex. As often as you see someone that has red hair, you meet someone who's intersex, right? So there's great diversity. The same way our bodies, there are diversity. There's diversity around our bodies. There's diversity around sex assigned at birth. And that's important to acknowledge because the intersex community is very invisible, right? And we can answer more questions about what that means. Gender identity is when a baby's born, let's say the doctor says it's a female. We assume that, or it's a girl, that the child will grow up and identify as female, right? That she will be a woman. Oftentimes that is true. Sometimes it's not, right? And how that person understands that their relationship to gender is their gender identity. So I may identify as female. I may not identify as female. I may identify as non-binary, right? I may identify as a femme. I may identify as masculine of gender. There are lots of ways to understand your gender identity that doesn't fit the binary. Okay, so the binary means male and female. Those are the boxes that we get, right? And we get along an invisible script with that our society reinforces. And we reinforce it in lots and lots of ways because our society is very embedded with gender. It's so embedded we don't even know, right? And when we have, for instance, gender reveal parties, are we revealing the gender? We can't because we don't understand that person's identity, right? And what we're revealing actually is what the doctor would say, sex assigned at birth, but there are a bunch of babies that we're missing because they may be intersex and we wouldn't know that, right? Gender expression is how we express our gender identity to the world. So we will have an understanding and of our gender and, right, we will manifest that in some way. And it may be congruent with what the world expects for us, and it may not, and that's okay. That's the possibility of gender, that we can define what it looks like for us, right? Next slide. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the trans umbrella, and we have a couple of, I broke this down in a particular way. I broke it down in binary, right? So we have trans men and trans women. So trans men were assigned female at birth and they identify as men, right? So they are along the binary. And trans women are folks who were assigned male at birth and they identify as women, right? And I say trans women, trans men. It doesn't mean that someone owes us the identity of trans woman or trans man. That means that this is sort of like a technical term. They may identify as men and women, and that is valid. And that is correct, right? And we have non-binary folks that the construct of male and female, whether it's trans or cis meaning there is alignment with sex assigned at birth and gender identity, just doesn't fit for lots of reasons, right? And non-binary folks can look in many, 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 many ways. Non-binary folks can use any pronouns that mean something to them. Non-binary folks can present in masculine ways and feminine ways and androgynous ways, in ways that they've only discovered and they've only articulated. And there's a lot of ways that folks identify themselves in terms of non-binary identities. So this is really the possibility and strength that non-binary people bring to society. They, and I call it a sort of liberation, right? We have folks who are on the binary, and then folks who know that this binary is actually false, and we could define what this means to us. The other thing is that historically, what gender has taught us is that gender, what we know is gender is not fixed. Gender has changed historically, right? The first people to wear high heels were not cis women or trans women. They were cis men, right? So, and pink was not for girls. It was seen as a strong color, and it was in the 1800s for boys. So all of these beliefs and understandings, right, that we have about gender, or what society tells us in terms of our roles and responsibilities to live up to these things, they're actually malleable. And non-binary folks are saying, hey, you know what? Even beyond the binary, there are these new possibilities that we can create for ourselves. Beauty and joy in possibility. So next slide. I want to be mindful of time because we have an amazing panel coming up. I wanted to share this teaching tool developed by trans students, and this is the Gender Unicorn. And this image is really friendly for folks to understand where these concepts live, right? Gender identity lives in our understanding. If you look at the rainbow is a thought, right? How we understand ourselves. Is it connected to our biology? Are our thoughts and our brain connected to our biology? I'm not going to answer that question because I would say yes, right? Can we distinguish whether it is or it's not? There are no clear answers, and that's okay, right? Because everyone's identity is valid. Our gender expression are the green dots that you see along the entire unicorn. And how do I manifest this gender in the world? The chromosome, sex assigned at birth between the legs of the unicorn, that's a DNA strand, right? That's a DNA strand, and it tells us that not only do we understand sex assigned at birth through our physical bodies, but also at the chromosomal level, right? It's very complex. It's very nuanced. And we know for intersex babies, there are about 40 conditions that we've been able to identify. So it's not, this is an intersex baby and that is all. There are lots of possibilities around intersex folks. The orange heart is who we're physically attracted to, right? That happens in our emotions. Our emotions connected to our biology? Are they connected to our heart, to our mind? Maybe. And folks are attracted to women, they're attracted to men, they're attracted to people of other genders, right? And then emotionally, Emotional attraction, we have men, women, and other people. All right, let's move on to the next slide. So what do we know about family acceptance? Family acceptance is incredibly important. And we know this because research have told us that when young people, for instance, trans and non-binary young people who report having their pronouns respected, right, the suicide rates drop significantly. We also know there's a decrease in depression and anxiety. And family acceptance can range everywhere from, I don't understand, but I respect and love you, to I'm starting a chapter of PFLAG, right? I mean, there's a huge range of family acceptance. There are good outcomes just from parents saying, I don't understand, and I still love you, and I would never reject you, right? So it's important that we acknowledge that all of those levels of acceptance are incredibly important and life-saving, right? And if we go to the next slide, we will learn that family acceptance, right, rejection for young people is really significant. So there are higher rates for young people who are rejected from family of origin in terms of disengagement from education, from running away from the home, higher rates of depression and anxiety, higher rates of self-harm. These are significant impacts. And what research has told us is that family acceptance can be life-saving for children. Now, can I support a young person if they're not my child? Yes. And it can be life-saving as well. Yesterday, I was watching Tyler, I forgot his name. He's a medium and he has a show on Netflix. The beauty, he had a teacher who accepted him and embraced him and affirmed him. And on this episode I watched last night, he shared that had it not been for her acceptance, he might not be here with us today. So, and that I know lots and lots of stories about how that could happen. It may not be the teacher, it may be the administrator, maybe the counselor, it may be the neighbor, right? Or the parent, you may be the parent of a child who has a friend who's gay, lesbian, trans. Your acceptance is going to be significant in that child's life. It's important that we understand that this village for LGBTQ youth is extremely palpable. And having this village to help raise them and help sustain them could save a life. And that's really important. And how do we do this? How do we, what's needed of the adults in the lives of LGBTQ youth? Let's talk about that in the next slide. Supporting LGBTQ youth. I'm gonna talk to this from two different perspectives, right? Parents, listen to young people. When they come to you, they have thought about this a lot. They've thought about it and thought about it. They may have even shared it with a supportive adult in their school. They may have shared it with friends. So when they come to you, receive them with loving arms, open, loving arms, because that's what they need, right? And then let them lead you. Let them tell you what they want. They don't need to be fixed. Right? They just need to be listened. They may want you to they may just need you to say, I love you and I'm here, right? And our relationship doesn't change. They may want you to help them get a name change. They may want to introduce you to somebody who's significant in their life, right? Let them lead you. There's no right way, but there is a way to support and be present for your children, right? You may have questions. Questions are valid. Find other adults in similar situations. PFLAG has a wonderful support group. Gender Spectrum has a wonderful support group. Find those spaces where you could get your questions answered, and you don't have to rely on your children to do that. Do your research, right? Go through whatever process you need to go through as you understand who your children are. Some parents grieve, some parents do not grieve, right? All of that is valid, but it's essential that the child not be support to you, but you be support to them, and you find other adults to create your support network. Provide opportunities for community building, help them find that community. It may be online, it may be at a local LGBT center, it may be, joining a league. There are lots and lots of opportunities and options to help them build community. Expose LGBTQ youth to historical contributions that LGBT adults have made. They need to know that they are part of a long line of folks who have blazed a trail of safety for them and have impacted the world in really significant ways, right? Even beyond just movement work and changing our political climate or our social climate. How have LGBT people, changed medicine, changed science, changed, so they understand that they're part of something. They are not in isolation, although they may feel in isolation, they are not. And move to action, right? What does that mean? It may be picking up a book. It may be starting a PFLAG chapter. It may be all of those things. Figure out how you could do that to honor your child. Now, I speak to teachers and administrators. Listen to young people. They know what they need. They can tell you what they need. Even if they're in middle school, they can tell you what they need, what this looks like for them, right? Follow their lead. Do they want to set up a GSA? Do they want to have a teach-in? Do they want to bring in a speaker? All of these are opportunities. I would also say to teachers, administrators, invest in professional development. We can't expect teachers who haven't had this knowledge to have these conversations, right? They need the tools they need to expand their curricula, right? To include diversity in their curricula, but they need for you to set that up for them. I would also say, look at your physical environment. Do you have inclusive restrooms and locker rooms? Have you developed policies? Do you know how you would welcome a trans child into your second grade, into your kindergarten, into your middle school, into your high school? And how do you partner with families? Or let's say that the family does not know. How do you become the safe haven for this child? So when they're at school, they are respected and honored and affirmed. Of course, curricula I've mentioned, and move to action. Meet with your school board. What do they have to put in place to ensure that all children are thriving within your school district? Right? How does that happen? And we have lots and lots and lots of other suggestions for you that we can absolutely share through Gender Spectrum. I would encourage everybody to sign up for our groups or reach out for professional development and work with your local community to be able to create the community of care that all children need. And I will leave you with our last slide. We're not going to take questions right now. Stephen will manage the questions, but I will say Harvey Milk said, you've got to give them hope. Lots of LGBTQ young people feel hopeless. They feel alone. They haven't seen LGBT adults in their lives. We have to give them hope because they are our future. They are the hope. They are the possibility. The irony is we're giving them hope. They are the hope. So I hope you will hold on to those words and move to action with them. Thank you so much. And I look forward to continuing the conversation with you. Stephen.
Can you see me? Lily, thank you so much for that incredible presentation. At the end, I was almost gonna cry because it was here at Glenwood Springs in the middle school and the high school where I got hope. And it was my teacher's acceptance that kept me going. And I am here today because of them. And I'm thankful for you. And so thank you for that, Lily, for making me cry. I do want to let everyone know that the Q&A tool is now open. If you click the Q&A button, you can add a question, type in your question, and we will get to it. Lily will be part of our Q&A, so you can direct your questions to her. Our questions, again, can be anonymous and can be in Spanish. Now we're going to have our local panelists introduce themselves. Panelists, can we get your pronouns, your role in the community, why LGBTQIA youth are important to you, and why advocating for your youth are important. And let's start with Janet Gordon.
Hello, I'm Janet Gordon. Hey Stephen, it's good to see you again.
Nice to see you too.
I'm a licensed professional counselor here in the Roaring Fork Valley. And I specialize in working with the LGBT community and youth and adults. I am lucky enough to be able to go into several of the schools and support the GSAs, and I work with Aspen Out, which is an amazing organization to provide counseling through their scholarship program. I'm also on the board of a wonderful organization called Gay for Good, which helps build community. And we invite any families, anyone who wants to come out and volunteer with us to do that. It's a wonderful opportunity to build some community as well. And yeah, so about, I would say at this point, 65% of my private practice is working with LGBTQIA plus folks.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jenna. We're so lucky to have you in the Valley. Our second panelist is Sherry Smith.
Hi, everyone. Sherry Smith, she, her, and it is so wonderful to see so many familiar faces and to be part of this this conversation and amazing community. I am a teacher at Aspen High School, and Stephen, it was so wonderful to just hear you speak of your teachers, because that is what we hope to do in providing those safe spaces and affirming spaces for kids. And I am a GSA advisor, and I work closely with Janet and some other people that are on this call. So thank you for putting this all together this evening.
Awesome. Thank you, Sherry. And like I was saying, teachers play so many roles: teaching, counseling, advocates. Our third panelist is Mary Moe.
Hello, I am Mary, and I am a Asian American or Asian Canadian trans feminine person. I use they, she pronouns. So I'm an AmeriCorps Vista in the Valley, which means that I am serving for a year to help improve mental health capacity, improve LGBTQ wellness, and prevent and treat substance abuse disorder. The main benefit of my background, I guess, where I came from, is that I exist and I have been raised at the intersection of many points. So some of my background is academic. I graduated from the University of Washington with psychology and political science, and I focused on LGBTQ advocacy and studies in a lot of my coursework. I have diverse cultural interactions. I'm very well acquainted with the LGBTQ communities online across many, many spaces, roaming across the internet, to the point where I can probably give you a good read of what spaces to go to and what are good communities to find for your very specific needs. You can just ask me. I exist at the intersection of generations because I am not quite a youth myself, but I'm also not quite a middle-aged or older adult. So I know the cultural traditions of trans and gender diverse youth, especially online, but also in real life. and I can speak to them. I can give practical advice on how to deal with them, how to deal with those spaces, how to live your best self and what to expect. And finally, lived experience and survivorship. I am from a socially conservative background, and I have made it this far because of the people around me who have supported me, the people in my communities I found who have given me wisdom and strength to carry on. And so the reason that I'm here is that I want to now in turn help people, and especially trans youth like myself, thrive and find joy in this world, because everyone, and I mean everyone, deserves life worth living, especially as their true and authentic selves. Thank you.
That was beautiful. Thank you so much for that. Thank you. I'm really excited to introduce our youth panelists now. Can we start with Lucy?
Hello, my name is Lucy. My pronouns are she, they. I'm a lesbian and my gender identity is currently unlabeled. I'm a sophomore at Roaring Fork High School, and I'm also the vice president of the Roaring Fork High School GSA. I'm here today just to be the youth advocate that I think I would have liked to see when I was younger, like in middle school.
Yeah.
Like, I know there's a lot of adults saying like it's okay to be gay and, you know, who are there to support you, but it really, really makes a difference when you can see somebody your age and somebody you can relate to and somebody you can come and talk to. So I think I just want to be that for other people because I didn't have it for myself.
Awesome, Lucy. And last but not least, Cass.
My name's Cass. My pronouns are they, them, and I identify as a non-binary lesbian. I'm the president at Roaring Fork GSA, and I mean, I want to advocate for LGBTQIA youth because I am an LGBTQIA youth.
Thank you, Stephen. Yes. So I hope the education was useful. Beyond my role at Gender Spectrum, I am a lesbian identified Jersey Rican. You don't find us often because they're usually New Yorican. I'm a Jersey Rican. And I currently live in Los Angeles with my wife and our 2 children. And I had the fortune of having a family that was not rejecting in any way, shape, or form, but saw the impact that it had on my peers when they were rejected, and just found that incredibly unjust. So I've done this work for about 20 years, and most of that was in New York City. So that's who I am.
Fabulous. I want to start the Q&A by asking our youth panelists, Lucy and Cass, after hearing Lily's presentation, what was the most interesting or helpful thing that you heard? Lucy, do you want to start?
I want to say that it was a really good presentation and definitely very educational. There's a couple of things I would just add. And first of them is that a lot of sexualities, especially like asexuality and aromanticism, those are spectrums. So it's important to remember that because someone identifies as asexual doesn't mean they're never, ever going to experience sexual attraction. And the same goes for aromanticism and a lot of other sexualities. And I think another thing that's super important is pronouns do not equal gender, because pronouns are part of your gender expression and not your gender identity. So if somebody uses she, her pronouns, that doesn't mean that she is a cis woman or she is a woman at all. You know, like, or someone uses he, him pronouns, it doesn't mean he's a man, okay? And a good example is if somebody says to you, hi, I'm non-binary, but I use he, him pronouns. You say, I would like you to not refer to me as a boy because I'm not a boy, I'm non-binary. So you would say, great, I'm gonna use he, him pronouns for you, but I'm not gonna call you a boy because you're not a boy and you asked me not to. And it's about respecting people's personal choices of how they want to express themselves and how they want to identify, and not always aligning with the, you know, what is normalized in society as being the pronouns for a woman or the pronouns for a man, because that's not a thing.
Awesome. Thank you, Lucy. Hashtag 2024, Lucy for president. Kaz, do you have any comments you want to add?
Yeah, I think it's like important to really emphasize like trying to actually talk to us as like LGBTQIA youth, because I feel like a lot of times, like just as youth in general, like adults don't always tend to take like our wants and our needs into consideration because
Mm.
they have their own experiences, and because they're older and have more experience, don't always take like younger experiences into their consideration and will make decisions for us, which can sometimes be a little bit detrimental. And yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, you guys. We have a question for Janet. Janet, what resources are available here in the Valley that you would recommend to support LGBTQIA+ youth and their families?
Great question. And the wonderful thing is I think we're getting more and more resources in the Valley all the time. So there's a couple different resources. Stephen, your conversation group at Stepstone, amazing, awesome. So excited that you're doing that. And building community is so important. And Youth Zone, there's also a program in Glenwood, a safe space that meets weekly. GSAs are huge, wonderful, amazing community building at the school. So I definitely encourage youth, and I encourage family to encourage their youth to go to the GSAs, whatever letter under the rainbow that you fall under. It's a wonderful place for allies to show their support as well. There's also PFLAG is a wonderful resource. Then Aspen Out also has resources. We also have the ability to offer scholarships so that people can get counseling. And I mean, obviously I'm biased because I'm a counselor, but I really believe that having a safe space and a non-judgmental space to come and to talk to and to process through things, whether it's the individual or family members, everyone deserves support. And coming out, transitioning, all of that is a process. And it's a great place. Lilly had mentioned, finding places to ask questions, finding places to get education. Counseling is a way to do that. And I know it's not local, but I'm just going to give a shout out to Gender Spectrum, because what an amazing organization. And I got a lot of education there when I was first starting, and I continue to constantly refer to their website and their amazing conference that Sherry and I were lucky enough to go to before COVID, in person before COVID came. So, and I know that Bridgetta has put together, and Mary has put together an amazing resource list. So I highly suggest everyone take a look at that. And yeah.
Thank you. There seems to be a lot of resources in the Valley, right? It just depends on where to get them.
Yes,
do you have any advice on like where someone could start on getting resources?
Well, Brigitta's list, the list that we are publishing in the chat is an excellent place to get resources. Aspen Out also has it published on their website. Also, there is Carbondale is going to have their Pride Parade coming up, and there'll be resources there, but that's also just a wonderful place to show support as well. So that's something for everyone to mark down on their calendar too. That's a really amazing experience to be part of.
Thank you, Janet. Our next question is for Mary. Mary, Zach asks, is it LGBT plus or LGBTQ plus?
So I want to say that both are acceptable. LGBTQ plus is somewhat of a more sort of accepted modifier in certain parts of the country. But here you should be fine using LGBTQ plus in 99% of cases. I know that some areas of the country, Q, queer, is still used as a derogatory term or a slur. I've heard that in Georgia and the Deep South, it is used as that. So I would be more careful in those instances. But for now, I would say LGBTQ plus is fine, as well as LGBT plus. Some individuals in and of themselves also may have trauma surrounding the use of this Q term. So if someone asks you not to do it, then just politely stop doing it. And I guess Q, like can I seg into answering what
Yeah,
this queer
can you
means?
please
Okay.
talk more about what queer means, queerness, when you would use the label as queer, what does queer mean from Q to A, you know?
Yes.
Thank you, Mary.
Okay, so queer is used by many as an umbrella term for non-heterosexual and non-cis-sexual identities. So that's like the basic definition, but more broadly in the cultural and sometimes political sense, it is used to signify identities and manifestations as well as ways of living that specifically defy cis and hetero norms and rigid boundaries. So it could be used as a way to tell the world that you are part of this culture, which is opposed to patriarchy, which is opposed to oppression, and is for self-expression in ways that have been historically suppressed for hundreds or thousands of years. I would say that is a very, very basic primer of what queer means. There's an entire philosophical school dedicated to studying the intersection of identities and of political views and movements called queer theory. If you want to get into that, some good authors to start with are Susan Stryker's Transgender History, Julia Serrano, who wrote things such as Whipping Girl, which is a manifesto and a book detailing the effects of transmisogyny as well as the causes of it, and Judith Butler, who is one of the most famous queer theorists out there. So yeah, thank you.
No, thank you, Mary, and thank you for adding to our reading list. I'm very excited to add those. Next, for Lucy and Cass, as students in our Valley, what role do you think schools should play in supporting LGBTQIA plus students and youth?
I mean, just sort of in general, having like what was mentioned before, having like a safe space and just people who like affirm your identity and accept you. And I think maybe I can't speak for all the schools in the Valley because my experience is only at Roaring Fork High School, but like just like having that education with like teachers and like students even, and just trying to like understand how much that like even simple things like names and pronouns can mean to like a genderqueer student or just any student who may want to use different pronouns really. And I guess like I really can't express enough just like how nice it is to hear like your name and your pronouns and like feel more like yourself, I guess.
Thank you.
I'd say the role of schools in, supporting LGBTQ youth is to educate and promote inclusivity in the school. And so some small key things that ways this could happen are like maybe give a small crew or homeroom like during that time, like a lesson on LGBTQ plus identities, or saying something like, hey, today is Trans Day of Visibility, today is National Coming Out Day, just like raising awareness that these people exist. And also I think that a lot of teachers should be aware of is just refrain from using gender terms and actions in the classroom. Like instead of saying ladies and gentlemen, like there's a bunch of other things you could say, or don't be like girls over there, boys over there. Don't be like line up boy, girl, like that isn't creating this norm that everyone is either a boy or a girl, and it can help. And avoiding those things can help make a more inclusive space. And especially to people who are either questioning or in the closet, because then you're not forcing labels on them or making them feel uncomfortable in any way. And, teachers should be briefed on little things like that. And like what Cass said, how to use pronouns, because that's really important. And especially in making an LGBTQ child feel accepted and feel like they're respected as a person when somebody uses their pronouns. And like, I think we just have to keep talking about it in schools, because if we don't, it becomes this shameful, untouchable topic. Like a huge example of that would be like, a lot of schools tend to avoid talking about menstrual issues with people who are assigned male at birth. And then it makes it this shameful topic and something that people who are assigned female at birth should have to hide, even though it's like a completely normal occurrence, right? And I think that talking about LGBTQ existence and kids can help raise this awareness of cisgender heterosexual people, that they are privileged. Like a huge example, I'm on a ski team with all white people, right? And I don't really think about that much. But then there's times when I have this realization, I'm like, I am really, really privileged right now. And my race plays a role in that, right? And there's always going to be kids who are going to be mean and going to say rude things that they might not even see as rude, like that's so gay or that kind of thing. And if teachers become aware of that and staff become aware of that, then they can say, hey, cut that out. Like, that's not okay. And the more kids get reprimanded for stuff, the less it's going to happen and the less normalized it's going to become. And like, promoting acceptance doesn't have to be exclusive to a GSA. Like, of course you should promote your GSA, but just because like GSA is more for like planning things around, you know, LGBTQ advocacy. Like a huge example, we're planning the Pride Parade right now. Like, not everyone has to plan the Pride Parade, but everyone should be a respectful ally and learn how to be a respectful ally. Like, you shouldn't have to go to GSA to learn how to do that, I think.
Once again, hashtag 2024, Lucy for president. I don't even know what to highlight because you said so many incredible things. Thank you so much. I have another question for Mary, but Janet and Sherry, please let us know if you have any comments. Claire asks, can you recommend where to get counseling for your young children ages 9 to 5? Through Center in Denver has quite the wait list. Is there anyone you like in Grand Junction?
I want to say,
Or
as a Vista, I have worked in this area or served in this area to sort of disseminate resources as much as possible and to find resources as much as possible. And from what I can see, please tell me if I'm wrong, but I think I'm 90% sure there's not a lot of very, very, for young children, gender affirming and gender specialized counseling in this area in the Roaring Fork Valley. True Center in Denver is a good place, but I know that it's far. And so one of the recommendations that I made in my survey report that for the folder which I linked earlier today, about the LGBTQ survey that I did in this area shows that there is an agreed upon need for these services here, as well as for HRT, hormone replacement therapy, and puberty blockers for older people, maybe adolescents and young adults. So we are currently involved in efforts to increase the scope of these services and bring them from Denver to here so that people don't have to drive 200 miles over the mountains just to get essential care.
That's awesome. Janet, do you have any comments?
You know, I do the mental health counseling piece. Yeah, it's really tricky. I got into this work specifically working with the transgender and gender non-binary communities because there wasn't anybody. And I was doing the same thing of kind of going, okay, let me find you someone who specializes in this because you deserve that support. And, you know, you can't, there wasn't anyone. So, you know, I always suggest people go get the education. There are now starting to be a lot of good continuing ed for therapists. At the same time, I'm also going to say that it is something that we need more counselors who specialize in working with the LGBTQ plus community in general. And I do not work with young children. It's a specialty. Being a child's counselor really is an amazing specialty. And I hugely support that. That being said, I wish there were more folks, and hopefully there will be soon. I know Aspinall is working to provide continuing education in our community. Hopefully that's going to be coming through really soon, and we'll have more. The True Center at Children's in Denver is an amazing place. There are some great online resources again, but unfortunately, part of living in rural Western Colorado is that we do not have as many resources as we need yet. We are working on it, and I am very, very hopeful. Amazing people like Stephen come in and start programs, and you know, again, hopefully it's just going to keep getting better and better.
Thank you so much, you guys. Our next question is for Lilly. Someone asked, any tips on how to move forward if you forget or misgender someone? I've heard not making a big deal, apologizing quickly, or talking afterwards is something you could do. Just trying to understand how to ensure I don't offend again.
Yeah. So it's important to not be like, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. And that puts the person in the position where they have to take care of you, right? They didn't make a mistake. You made the mistake. So it's important that if you need to say, I'm sorry, and I will work harder, right? Because you're the one who has done the work, right? The other thing is that this is a muscle. You have to build it. You got to practice, 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 practice. If you don't have this as part of your language, but we don't make trans and non-binary people our caretakers in this process. Okay. We assume responsibility as privileged people in society and do the work to fix it. Right. The other thing I want to mention, since I have the mic for a second, I just want to point out that when you asked Lucy and Cass to like reflect on what I presented, they expanded it, right? Young people have more information and knowledge than we do. So for us to make decisions, we're losing part of the picture. So I just want to center that. And that's a prime example as to why we need young people to lead and why we need to listen very carefully. So thank you for expanding that information.
Fantastic. Well, let's ask Lucy and Cass. Can you explain to us what is GSA Club and what do you guys do?
Well, this year we're sort of in the process of trying to sort of like revitalize the GSA at Carbondale, because we want it to be not just sort of like a lunch hangout that like a couple kids go to. Like we actually want to be doing stuff in the community and providing like a safe space. So
well, can I ask also, like, why is being a part of GSA important to you guys? And why are you in it personally? Like, why are you doing the community engagement? Like, you guys are working so hard. Like, where do you guys get that building your fire?
I guess because I moved back to the Valley pretty recently, like beginning of this school year, and the high school I was at before, we had a GSA, but our teacher supervisor wasn't a super great ally and nobody went because she wasn't a very good ally. And it sort of just like turned me off from GSA for a while until like a family friend sort of like encouraged me to like start going to GSA here. And like I realized that like people are just a lot better with it and that there was a chance to like actually do stuff and like speak about a topic that like, because it pertains to me, like of course I'm going to feel passionately about it because it's something that like I know that the people before me have had to fight for to get to where we are today, and like we're still not all the way there. So it's something that we have to like continually address, especially like if you want to look at what's going on in Florida right now, like it's still very much a problem.
Well, thank you so much, Cass. I love that idea you were saying that like certain people open the doors for us, but we have to keep it open for the other people. Lucy, I'll ask you the same question. What is GSA? Why are you a part of it? Why is it important?
Yeah, I mean, GSA last year because of COVID, our GSA like totally fell apart. It was non-existent. I remember it was like, come to online GSA, and I was the only person there. I was like, okay, no way, like absolutely not. And then I was just kind of expected the same from this year, which was really disappointing because actually the GSA at the Carbondale Middle School is really big and like a huge part of the school there. So like what Cass said, we're trying to revitalize the GSA because we like lost all our progress. We're like starting from scratch. It's like making up another GSA. And so we mostly have to get on our feet before we do anything. I think we did a movie night, but it wasn't super popular. But the biggest thing we're doing this year is the Pride Parade. We're super involved in the planning for that. And like, hopefully that can be our big event. And next year we will go on to bigger, better things. But also, yeah, I have to agree with Cass on this one. Like, I'm passionate about it because it, pertains to me. I'm part of this community, and I'm not gonna, I know a lot of people in the community look down on GSA for, I'm sure, what are valid reasons, but also what are just very rude reasons. Like they're like, oh, that's not cool. Like, I don't have to be gay and go to GSA. Like, you don't have to say that about GSA just because you're part of the community. Like, you don't have to go, but looking down on it is very rude because it is supposed to be a safe space, and it is supposed to be, you know, a community where we can promote inclusivity and advocate for it. And so I think that that's really important, because if I'm sitting back and being passive, then I'm, you know, exactly what Cass said, I'm erasing all the progress we've ever made, and I'm not helping in the, you know, movement of making more progress, especially as the next generation, especially as a youth. You know, like what Liz was saying, like, not in like a rude way, but we probably know more about this than a lot of adults do, just because our generation grew up with it a lot more than the older generations did. And so I think that being a part of that progress is important, and that's why I'm in GSA.
And thank you guys for taking on the responsibility and the work, especially the planning of Pride Parade. Thank you. Our next question is for Sherry. As an educator, what celebrations and opportunities do you see in your district's support of LGBTQIA+ youth?
Well, first I want to say, Lucy and Cass, you two are absolutely amazing. And being an advisor to a GSA at a school, these are the little celebrations in and of themselves, right? Working with kids that are so amazing. We do have every Wednesday an opportunity for students to meet Janet. Kudos to Janet. She goes up and down the valley connecting all the GSAs. I think the students, because of COVID, there was a lot that sort of broke up that communication and opportunity for the students to be together. And, you know, really looking forward to bringing that back together. I will say we have amazing counselors at the district. We have amazing support systems. I feel like I work with amazing administrators that are very supportive of our youth. And so I feel very fortunate to be part of such an incredible district that does support our students. So the celebrations, I think, are the every Wednesday where we get together and talk to the students and hear from them. And we do have a few things that are going on. Bridgetta, who has been instrumental in putting this together. The Love Notes project was an amazing opportunity to sort of bring people together and organizations together, and to see those displays at the schools that's a huge celebration as well. And we plan to continue that effort. And I think Lucy and Cass are correct in that it is, you know, it should be more about being an ally and not necessarily just an opportunity for kids to, you know, feel like they need to go to the safe space, which that's a really important part of it. But I think growing it so that you have more allies and more people supporting these kids is important. Okay.
Thank you, Sherry. We have a question for Lilly from you. Can you be straight and still be attracted to a transgender person without having a different label for your own sexuality? Just wondering why there has to be a different sexuality.
That's a good question. So can you be straight and be attracted to a trans person?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely, right? If I'm a woman and attracted to trans men, that's a man, right? So I'm attracted to men, and that would make me straight or heterosexual. And then the other part of the question is?
Just wondering why there has to be a different sexuality. So I guess.
Why there has to be a different sexuality? Mm-hmm. Yeah, beyond straight?
I guess for people who are attracted to transgender people, or maybe aren't attracted to any type of gender necessarily, why there might be that other attraction.
Right. I think we have all of these words and these diverse identities because we have language and we want to understand the world. And in order to understand the world, we put language, we attach language, right? The thing is that there are things we don't have language for yet. So there are lots of possibilities around identities, and you could create what makes sense for you, right? So thinking about that, and I think in our society, when we are born and the images that we see and the people around us, for the most part, we see primarily heterosexual relationships, right? Now we know that that's only one form. There are lots and lots and lots of ways to have relationships with people, and those relationships to have really deep meanings, regardless of whether they're sexual or not sexual, right? We can have a very deep relationship that's platonic with someone for our entire life, and that is our primary person in life. And all of that is valid, and all of that is beautiful.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. Our next question is from Mary. Mary, from your own experience, what kind of support has meant the most to you? How can one be a good ally to someone who is transgender or going through a transition?
I want to say the support that has meant most to me is the support of people who have walked this path before me and who know the struggles and who know what would help, what may help and what doesn't. Because having a kind voice tell me that things are going to be okay, that this is nothing to worry about, and answer any and all questions that may came up has been instrumental in helping me. As well, to add on to that, I would say like vibrant LGBTQ queer communities where I can be myself and be vulnerable and be around others who are like that and who are like-minded have also been important to me. The vulnerability is especially important because what matters most in those spaces is that you are your authentic self. That's why we're having this trans discussion in the first place, to help people be their authentic selves. So in an area where people are understanding of not only transgender issues, but are also trans themselves, who can speak from lived experience as well, who have mental health, common mental health problems, and who may be able to speak and share those as well so that you feel less alone, etc. Those are invaluable. And I would say that it's almost nebulous and almost not possible to describe. There's a lot of trans quote unquote culture online that has been super expressive and helped me express my innermost feelings, my desires, my emotions better than I could ever have on in sort of cisgender communities or cisgender ally support, no matter how well-meaning they are. So I actually linked a few of these online communities in my resource sheet, but they include, so you want to learn more about trans people, or you might want to learn more about trans people, which also serves as an educational hub for cis allies, and TCGJ, which is a very long-standing server that I've been on with a very diverse mod team and people from all over the world. I think diversity is very important too, because in these communities, a lot of people are not just white. They're not just like upper middle class. I am friends with a Filipino trans person from literally the Philippines. I'm friends with Finnish trans people. I'm friends with Ukrainian trans people. I'm friends with trans people all over Europe, some in South Asia, some in Brazil, some in East Asia. So just having like this international network of people that you can go to and to share experiences with and find commonalities with has been a godsend for me. It has been very, very useful, very effective, and it made me feel at home when I didn't really have like an emotional home to go home to in the first place. So can I also piggyback on the can you be straight and still be attracted to a trans person question, like real quick?
Of course.
Okay, so can you be straight and still be attracted to a trans person? I would want to say yes. In fact, being attracted to binary trans people, so like basically people who identify only as trans men or trans women, is basically the same attraction as being attracted to cisgender people of those gender identities. It is the same thing because they are the same gender as the cis people, and this is considered almost a fact amongst the entire transgender community, to the point where if you say that you like trans men and you liking cis men is a different sexuality, people tend to find that rude and also problematic. sometimes a bit transphobic because it implies that the trans man, is not a real man. It is a woman light, so it should be sort of separate from straight attraction. So just wondering why there has to be a different sexuality. There really isn't. I want to say I wrote about this a bit earlier, but scoliosexual is a bit of a problematic term because it's been associated with what are called chasers, or people who pursue trans people because of an idealized version of what trans means, or because they think they're exotic sexually or romantically, etc. So I guess like it's very, very frowned upon in a lot of the trans community. And I get my sources from all over the internet, all over my peers, including this aforementioned trans site that I'm going to send to everyone that has a Discord link in it. So I want to say, yeah, which is an example of, I guess, how I can find support and community within the trans community, because people who have been slighted by these experiences, or people who are hurt by them, can find reassurance that, you know, I'm not going crazy when people say, oh, I like you because you're trans so much, right? So we have this shared solidarity that cannot be found anywhere else. Thank you very much.
No, thank you so much. And I think that that's a perfect place to end our conversation. The time went so quickly. I am so thankful for everyone who showed up tonight. A special thanks for Lilly and Gender Spectrum for coming out tonight and speaking to the Valley. And thank you so much for all the panelists and all your answers. Thank you to our sponsors and the partners for putting this together. There will be a recording of the event. We'll send the link to your email with the link, the different resources that we talked about tonight. Please feel free to share this event with anyone who you might think should watch it or wants to become educated. And thank you, friends, for joining us tonight. Have a great evening and night, and hope to see you soon.